May 9th, 1943, 11:47 a.m., 6 miles south of Bizerte, Tunisia. The Kübelwagen's engine sputters twice, then dies. Obergefreiter Klaus Fischer slams his palm against the dashboard, but the vehicle offers nothing back except the ticking of cooling metal and the distant rumble of artillery. Around him, the North African sun hammers down on twisted olive groves and dust that hangs in the air like a curtain. The smell of cordite and burning oil coats the back of his throat. Out. Everyone out. Hauptmann Weber's voice cracks with exhaustion rather than authority. Fischer watches his commanding officer stumble from the lead vehicle, uniform dark with sweat, face crusted with dust so thick it obscures his iron cross. 3 days ago, their battalion numbered 412 men. Now, 23 soldiers cluster around 3 disabled vehicles on a road that leads nowhere. Fischer grabs his car 98K and slides from the Kübelwagen. His boots hit the hard-packed earth, and he feels the weight of everything: the rifle, the ammunition pouches that hold maybe 20 rounds total, the canteen that's been empty since yesterday. To the north, black smoke rises in columns. Bizerte is burning. To the south, the American tanks are coming. He's 22 years old. He's been in Africa for 11 months. He's been hungry for 6. "They'll be here in minutes," says Jeffreiter Hoffmann, the radio man, though his radio has been silent for hours. "Maybe we should." "Should what?" Weber's laugh is bitter. "Run? To where, Hoffmann? The sea is behind us. The Americans are in front. The British are to the east." He unslings his pistol, drops the magazine, counts the rounds with his eyes. 4 bullets. He slides the magazine back in with a click that sounds like a door closing. Fischer watches the tree line to the south. The rumble is getting louder, not artillery now, but engines. Multiple engines. The distinctive roar of American Shermans, probably the 1st Armored Division that's been pushing north for days. He thinks of his training at Bad-Tooth, where the instructors taught them that American soldiers were soft, undisciplined, led by Jews and capitalists who couldn't fight. He thinks of the newsreels showing Germany's inevitable victory. He thinks of the letter from his mother that arrived 3 weeks ago, telling him that Hamburg was bombed, that his sister was in the hospital, that there was no butter, no coffee, no meat. The first Sherman breaks through the tree line 300 meters away. Then another, then 5 more. They spread out in a textbook formation, and Fischer realizes with a strange detachment that he's about to die or surrender, and he doesn't know which is worse. In the village of Dieburg, where he grew up, there are stories from the Great War about what the Allies did to prisoners. Dark stories. His father never spoke of his time as a POW in France, but the silence is said enough. "Fix bayonets," Weber says quietly. "It's not an order. It's not even a suggestion. It's just words filling the space before the end." But then Weber does something unexpected. He removes his pistol belt, places it on the hood of the Kübelwagen. He looks at his men, these boys and exhausted soldiers who've been retreating for weeks, and his face softens. "I'm not ordering any man to die today," he says. "Not here. Not like this. Fisher watches as Weber pulls a white undershirt from his pack. He ties it to a rifle barrel. He holds it up. The Shermans stop. Their turrets track left, right, covering every angle. A half-track rolls up behind them, and American soldiers pour out, rifles raised. They're wearing clean uniforms. They look fed. One of them is chewing something gum. Fisher realizes he hasn't seen gum in 2 years. Han ho. Hands up. The American voice is loud, accented but clear. Fisher raises his hands. Around him, 23 German soldiers do the same. The war, for them, is over, or so they think. What Klaus Fischer doesn't know, what none of them know, is that they about to begin a journey that will challenge everything they've been taught about the enemy. In 6 weeks, he'll be eating steak. In 3 months, he'll be playing baseball. In a year, he'll be sitting in a movie theater in Kansas, watching a film, free to walk around a camp with minimal guards, and he'll write a letter home that the censors will allow through. A letter that says simply, "I don't understand anything anymore, but first, the Americans have to search them." A young lieutenant approaches, maybe 25, with a Thompson submachine gun held casually. He looks at the surrendered Germans without hatred, without triumph, just tired efficiency. "Water?" The lieutenant asks in broken German, holding up a canteen. Weber stares. Fisher stares. The Americans are offering them water. The lieutenant shrugs, takes a drink himself to show it's safe, then hands it to Weber. "Long way from here to Casa," he says. "You'll want to stay hydrated." Klaus Fischer watches Hauptmann Weber drink from an enemy canteen, and something in the world shifts. It's a small shift, barely noticeable, but it's there. The first crack in everything he thought he knew. May 23, 1943. Camp Philip Kearny, Casablanca, Morocco. Klaus Fischer sits on a wooden crate, third in line for delousing, watching American medics work through the captured German soldiers with practiced efficiency. They spray, they stamp forms, they move to the next man. Assembly line processing of the defeated. The American corpsman doesn't look up from his clipboard. "You're on Transport Group C," the corpsman says in accented German. The word hangs in the air. Around Fischer, the murmur of conversation stops. Jeffreiter Hoffman, 2 crates over, leans forward. "You lucky bastards drew America." The corpsman moves to the next man. "Stripped down. Let's go." Some of the older men remember the propaganda, the land of gangsters and breadlines, of racial violence and Jewish plutocrats. The newsreel showed Depression-era poverty, homeless Americans in shanty towns. But then there was the water. The clean bandages on Schitzbauer's infected leg. There was the delousing instead of disease. The American efficiency that was supposed to be German, but somehow wasn't. He wrote letters, said there was work, said everyone had radios, said you could say what you wanted. June 3, 1943. Around him, 200 German POWs are packed into converted cargo holds, hammocks strung in rows, the air thick with body heat and the smell of vomit. An American guard stands at the bulkhead door, rifle slung, reading a magazine. He's younger than Fisher, with red hair and freckles, chewing gum with his mouth open. Every hour, he's replaced by another guard. They're wasting fuel bringing us to America, Hoffman says from the hammock above. Americans have everything, mutters another voice. The guard had tossed half a sandwich into a waste bin, and Fisher had watched with the stunned incomprehension of someone who has been hungry for so long that wasting food seems like a crime against nature. In Tunisia, they'd been eating British rations captured in 41 tins of bully beef that made men sick. Before that, whatever they could scavenge. And this American boy had thrown away more protein than Fisher had eaten in a week. They rig up a projector in one of the holds, and the German prisoners sit on the deck in rows while a cartoon plays on the bulkhead. Donald Duck in some kind of factory. The prisoners watch in silence. Some laugh nervously. Most just stare. Mountains of supplies. Ships launching, dozens of ships, hundreds of ships. That night, Fisher dreams of Dieburg. He wakes to the sound of men crying in the dark, homesick or seasick or just sick of everything. June 11th, 1943, 6:47 a.m. Newport News, Virginia. Newport News sprawls along the waterfront, buildings tall and intact, no bomb craters, no burned-out ruins. The harbor is choked with ships, Liberty ships, troop ships, destroyers, cargo vessels, a maritime forest of masts and smokestacks. Cranes swing loads onto waiting trucks. Dock workers, black and white, move cargo with mechanical efficiency. Everything is clean. Everything works. Nothing is burning. A crowd has gathered beyond the fence, American civilians, watching with curiosity rather than hatred. A woman holds a small boy on her hip. An old man smokes a cigarette. A Negro dock worker stops working to watch, then returns to his crane. Anyone breaks ranks, you'll regret it. They're marched to waiting trucks, new trucks. Fisher notes, as they drive through Newport News toward the train station, Fisher presses his face to the truck's canvas opening and stares. Cars, everywhere cars. Not military vehicles, but civilian automobiles, driving freely, burning gasoline like it's infinite. Store windows full of goods. A grocery with pyramids of canned food stacked in the window. A butcher shop with cuts of meat hanging in full view. There's no rationing, Hoffman whispers, staring. Look at them. They're fat. Fisher feels a strange vertigo, like the world has tilted. This looks like victory. This looks like a country that can fight a war on 2 continents and still have butter. At the train station, they're loaded onto passenger cars, not cattle cars, actual passenger cars with seats and windows. American guards distribute box lunches, sandwiches, apples, cookies, and small cartons of milk. Real milk. Fisher holds the carton, staring at it. He hasn't seen fresh milk in a year. Klaus Fisher bites into the sandwich. White bread, real butter. Sliced turkey, lettuce. His hands shake. Around him, German soldiers eat in silence, and Fisher realizes they're all crying, not sobbing, just tears running down faces as they eat food that they'd forgotten existed. The train rolls west through Virginia, then Maryland, then Pennsylvania. Fields pass by, unharvested and abundant. Farms with livestock. Towns with lights burning even in daytime. Everything alive. Hauptmann Weber sits across from Fischer, staring out the window with hollow eyes. "We can't win," he says quietly. The train carries them deeper into America, toward a camp in Oklahoma that Klaus Fischer has never heard of, toward steak dinners and baseball games and a kind of imprisonment that will be more devastating than any torture, because it will prove that everything they believed was a lie. June 14, 1943, 2:34 p.m., Camp Alva, Oklahoma. The heat hits like a physical force when Klaus Fischer steps off the train. Oklahoma in June is a different kind of heat than North Africa wet, heavy, pressing down on the lungs. The sky is enormous, a blue dome stretching to every horizon, and the land is flat and green in a way that makes Fischer's eyes hurt after months of desert tan. Camp Alva sprawls across former farmland, row after row of wooden barracks surrounded by a single wire fence maybe 8 feet tall. Not barbed wire, just chain link, like something that might surround a schoolyard. 4 guard towers stand at the corners, each manned by a single American soldier with a rifle. That's it. No machine gun nests. No minefields. No dogs. Fischer counts the guards he can see. Maybe 20 for a camp that he learned holds over 3,000 German prisoners. This is a camp? Jeffreiter Hoffmann stands beside him, squinting in the sunlight. Where are the fortifications? An American sergeant name tag reads Morrison, overhears and grins. You planning to escape, Fritz? Into where? You're in the middle of Oklahoma. Nearest town is Alva, population 3,000. Nearest city is Enid, 40 miles south. You want to walk through farmland where everyone knows everyone, looking like you do, speaking German? He shakes his head. We had a guy try last month. Made it 6 miles before a farmer's wife gave him a sandwich and called the sheriff. He was back for dinner. The processing takes 2 hours. More photographs, more paperwork. American clerks typing on machines, creating files, assigning barracks. A medical officer checks each prisoner temperature, blood pressure, examination of wounds or illness. When he finds Schitzbauer's leg infection from Tunisia, he makes a notation and tells a corpsman, "Get him to the infirmary." IV antibiotics full course. Antibiotics? Bauer stares. But I'm a patient. The medical officer says in German that's actually pretty good. In this camp, you get medical treatment same as our boys. Geneva Convention. Also common sense disease spreads. Now get moving. They're issued clothing. Not uniforms exactly, but work clothes dyed a distinctive blue-gray with PW stenciled on the back in white paint. 2 sets each. Underwear. Socks without holes. Shoes that fit. A blanket. A toiletry kit with soap, a toothbrush, tooth powder, and a razor. A razor? Werner holds it up, incredulous. They're giving us razors? You're expected to shave, Sergeant Morrison says. This isn't a vacation, but it's not a pigsty either. You'll maintain standards. Keep yourselves clean. Respect the rules. He pauses, looking at the assembled Germans with something that might be sympathy. Look, I know you've had it rough. We've all seen the newsreels from Europe, but you're in America now. You're prisoners, yeah, but you're still human beings. Act like it, and we'll treat you like it. Got it? No one answers. The concept is too foreign. June 14th, 1943, 6:15 p.m. Camp Alva Mess Hall. Klaus Fischer stands in the chow line with a metal tray, watching American cooks serve food from steaming vats. The smell alone is overwhelming. Meat, real meat, cooking, potatoes, vegetables, fresh bread. His stomach cramps with anticipation and disbelief. The first cook, a large man with tattooed forearms, slaps a piece of meat onto Fischer's tray. It's beef. A steak. Not a thin piece, not gristle, but an actual cut of beef, maybe 6 ounces, cooked medium, with juice running into the partition of the tray. Fischer stares at it. There's been a mistake. No mistake, the cook says. Keep moving. You're holding up the line. Mashed potatoes. Green beans with butter. A roll with real butter on the side. An apple. A glass of milk. Coffee. Fischer carries his tray to a long table where other German prisoners sit in stunned silence, looking at their food like it might be poisoned or a hallucination. Hauptmann Weber sits at the head of the table, his tray untouched in front of him. His face has gone pale. The Geneva Convention specifies that prisoners should receive rations equivalent to the captor's garrison troops, he says quietly, as if working through a problem. This is what American soldiers eat. Every day, says an older prisoner who arrived last week, an Afrika Korps veteran named Richter. 3 meals. Every day. Sometimes there's pie. On Sundays there's usually roast chicken or pork. He cuts into his steak, chews slowly. The first week, half the men got sick. Our stomachs couldn't handle it. Too much food. Too rich. Fischer cuts a piece of steak. The meat is tender, seasoned with salt and pepper, cooked properly. He puts it in his mouth and has to close his eyes. It tastes like civilization. It tastes like a world that isn't starving. Around him, German soldiers eat. Some cry, some laugh. Some just stare at their plates, faces blank with incomprehension. How? Hoffman asks, looking at Richter. How can they feed us like this? They're at war. How can they have food to waste on prisoners? Richter spreads his hands. America is different, you'll see. They produce more food than they can eat, more steel, more oil, more everything. The propaganda said they were weak. He laughs, but it's a bitter sound. The propaganda lied. After dinner, they're shown to their barracks. Each building holds 60 men in 2 rows of bunks with a coal stove at each end for winter heating. The bunks have mattresses thin, but actual mattresses with sheets. There are windows with screens to keep out bugs. Electric lights, a common area with tables and chairs. Tomorrow, Sergeant Morrison tells them, you'll be assigned work details. Farm labor, mostly. Maybe some in the camp workshops. You'll be paid. Paid? Fischer asks. 80 cents a day in camp scrip. You can use it at the canteen for cigarettes, candy, toiletries, whatever. Geneva Convention says working prisoners get compensation. Morrison shrugs. You work, you get paid. You cause trouble, you go to the stockade. Simple enough? That night, Klaus Fischer lies on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. Outside, he can hear crickets. Somewhere in the distance, someone is playing a harmonica, a German song, melancholy and familiar. Through the window, he sees stars, bright and clear in the Oklahoma sky. He thinks of the propaganda films, the images of American poverty and weakness, the promises that Germany would crush its enemies, that their cause was righteous, that sacrifice would lead to victory. He thinks of the steak on his plate, the butter on his bread, the casual abundance of everything in this camp in the middle of nowhere. He thinks of Hamburg, of his mother's letter about no butter, no coffee, no meat, about his sister in the hospital, about a Germany that's been at war for 4 years and is starting to eat itself. And Klaus Fischer, 22 years old, Obergefreiter in the Wehrmacht, decorated at Tobruk and captured at Bizerte, begins to understand that he has been lied to about everything that matters. Across the aisle, Hauptmann Weber is crying quietly into his pillow. He's not the only one. June 21st, 1943. Cotton fields, 3 miles south of Camp Alva. The sun is already brutal, and sweat soaks through his work shirt. Beside him, Jeff Ryder Hoffman works with methodical determination, head down, saying nothing. He's maybe 60, weathered and lean, with a straw hat pulled low. Good work, Sutherland says in English, then tries German. Gut, sehr gut. Sutherland pulls a canteen from his belt, drinks, then offers it to Fischer. Water, drink, hot today. But the man is offering water like there's simply 2 workers in a field. My father was a teacher. At noon, they break for lunch. Fischer watches condensation run down the side of the jug and remembers that America has ice in June, that refrigeration is common here, that abundance extends even to prisoners working in fields. They eat in the shade of the truck. My village right now, they're eating potato soup. If they're lucky, maybe turnips. The ration cards get smaller every month. Don't let it confuse you, says Hauptmann Weber, sitting apart from the others. This is strategy. They feed us to show superiority, to break our will. The Americans provided equipment, bats, balls, gloves, bases, and taught the rules. Fischer watches from the sideline, still unable to fully process the scene. Fischer turns to find an American guard, the red-haired young one from the ship, Private Ellis, holding out a glove. On the field, Jeff Ryder Hoffman is at bat. He swings, connects with a crack that sounds like a rifle shot, and the ball soars into the outfield. Hoffman runs, legs pumping, while German prisoners shout encouragement and Americans laugh and clap. He slides into second base in a cloud of dust, and both teams cheer. They play light toss, back and forth, while the game continues. My dad played semi-pro before the Depression. Ellis says, throwing easily. He always said baseball was about second chances. 3 strikes, 3 outs, 9 innings. Always another chance to come back. Ellis shrugs. Because you're going to be here for a while. Because bored prisoners make trouble. Because ... My sergeant says that if we treat you like animals, we become animals. Something like that. That night, after the game, Fisher showers in the barracks washroom, hot water, soap, privacy curtains, and tries to reconcile the world. In Tunisia, he killed men, American men, probably. They've set up a screen and a projector, and the entire camp prisoners and guards gathers to watch a movie. It's a Western, something called Stagecoach, with an actor named John Wayne. On screen, cowboys and Indians fight across a landscape that looks remarkably like Oklahoma. The Americans in the audience cheer when John Wayne shoots the villains. Some of the German prisoners cheer too, caught up in the story. When the movie ends, Sergeant Morrison stands in front of the screen. Happy 4th of July, gentlemen. Today we celebrate independence, freedom, and the idea that all men are created equal. But while you're here, you'll see how we do things. You'll see what we're fighting for. The fence is still just chain link. The guards are still minimal. I keep trying to find the trick, Weber says. The hidden purpose. The reason they're doing this. Weber stops walking. In the moonlight, his face looks haggard, older than his 34 years. Fisher doesn't answer because he's been thinking the same thing since Newport News, since the steak dinner, since the baseball game and the movies, and the casual abundance of everything. He thinks of the newsreels shown on the ship, the factories producing tanks in numbers that seemed impossible. He thinks of ice in June and butter on bread and 3,000 prisoners guarded by 20 men because there's nowhere to escape to in the heart of American plenty. Weber sits down on a bench near Barrack 7, puts his head in his hands. I told them we were fighting for civilization, for Germany, for a 1,000-year Reich. We should have questioned. Across the yard, someone starts playing the harmonica again, not a German song this time, but something American, slow and mournful. Blues music, Fisher will learn it's called. Music born from suffering, transformed into something beautiful. Klaus Fischer sits beside his captain and watches the stars wheel overhead, the same stars that shine on Germany on battlefields. In the morning, he'll wake to breakfast eggs, bacon, toast, coffee. He'll work in the fields or the workshop. He'll eat lunch with ice-cold lemonade. He'll play baseball or watch a movie or read a book from the camp library. And every moment of it will be a kind of torture, not because it's cruel, but because it's kind. America, August 17th, 1943, 2 p.m., Camp Alva Canteen. The canteen is a small building stocked with items that seem absurd in their abundance. Cigarettes in multiple brands, chocolate bars, chewing gum, shaving cream, writing paper, envelopes, even small luxuries like hair pomade and playing cards. Behind the counter, A German prisoner named Dieter Scholz manages inventory with the precision of a trained accountant, which he was before the war. Scholz asks, adjusting his glasses. But the act of choosing, of purchasing, carries a weight of normalcy that's almost painful. Writing paper, envelopes, stamps. Scholz counts out the items, makes change. Censors will read it, you know. Fisher takes his purchase back to his bunk. He sits on his bunk, pen in hand, paper blank, trying to find words for something that has no words. What will the censors allow? There are movies on weekends. Mama, I don't understand what we were told about America. It is not like the newsreels. The people are not starving. Crosses out the last paragraph. Too dangerous, too revealing. The censors might not pass it. I hope her health improves. Now he spends his days building furniture tables, chairs, shelving units for the camp, for nearby towns, sometimes for American military bases. The work is precise, satisfying, and it keeps his mind occupied. Werner has become philosophical during captivity, prone to long speeches about politics, economics, and the nature of war. Today, he's on about industrial capacity. Look at this wood, Werner says, running his hand over the planed surface. They shipped it on trains that run on time, through a country with intact rail lines, past cities that aren't bombed, through farmland that produces excess food. He sets down the plane. We learned that Germany needed Lebensraum, living space, that we needed to expand for resources. But look at America. They have a continent. They have resources. They have space. And they share it, immigrants from everywhere, working together, producing together. They have racial problems, Fisher says, remembering the Negro dock worker at Newport News, the segregated units he's seen. They're not perfect. How we were told it destroyed Germany, humiliated us, forced us into poverty. They didn't turn to fascism. They didn't invade their neighbors. They built dams and roads, and they recovered. What's your point? At lunch, they eat in the workshop break area sandwiches delivered from the mess hall, coffee from a percolator. An American guard named Corporal Henderson joins them, something that's become common. The initial rigid separation between captors and captured has softened into something more complex. Henderson speaks some German from grandparents who immigrated in the 1880s. My opa came from Bavaria, he says, stirring sugar into his coffee. Left because there was no work, no future. He told me Germany was beautiful but hard. America gave him chances. Farmed in Wisconsin, raised dairy cows. Did well enough to send my father to university. My father became a doctor. Henderson shrugs. But my opa used to say, Germany was where I was born. America is where I chose to live. There's a difference. That afternoon, Fisher thinks about choices. He thinks about the moment he joined the Wehrmacht, not because he was a fervent Nazi, but because everyone was joining, because it seemed patriotic, because his father's generation had fought in the Great War, and it seemed like duty. He thinks about the choices he didn't make to question, to resist, to think critically about the propaganda that filled every newspaper and radio broadcast. He thinks about Corporal Henderson's grandfather, who made a choice to leave Germany for America, who chose opportunity over familiarity, who chose a future. October 12, 1943, 7:45 p.m. Camp Alva Classroom Barracks. The English class meets 3 times a week, taught by an American lieutenant named Pearson, who studied German literature at Harvard before the war. 25 German prisoners sit at desks, practicing pronunciation, learning vocabulary, studying grammar. It's voluntary, but popular learning English is learning to decode the world around them. Fisher reads haltingly, "Allied for -ces ... @vance ... init ailey." Pearson nods. They are winning. We are winning. And you need to understand something. The war will end. Germany will lose. This is not propaganda. This is mathematics. Industrial capacity, resources, manpower. You've seen what America produces, and you're seeing just one small camp in one state. Imagine this multiplied across the entire country. Silence in the classroom. Some prisoners look uncomfortable, others nod slowly, having reached this same conclusion. When the war ends, Pearson continues in German now, you'll go home, you'll return to Germany. And you'll have a choice about what kind of Germany you want to build. You can cling to the old ideas, the nationalism, the racial theories, the grievances. But that democracy works. That diversity works. That abundance is possible when people cooperate instead of conquer. Germany has produced Goethe, Beethoven, Kant, Einstein. But in the last decade, Germany chose a different path. You can help choose a better one. After class, Fisher walks back to his barracks with Jeffreiter Hoffman. The camp is quiet, peaceful. In the distance, someone plays piano in the recreation hall. Beethoven, the Moonlight Sonata, played with skill and feeling. Fisher thinks about Hamburg. I don't know, Fisher says. But whatever it is, we'll have seen this. We'll have seen that there's another way. Men talking quietly in German. Someone laughing at a joke. The distant whistle of a train passing through Alva. The same sounds, he realizes, that you might hear in any barracks, any dormitory, any place where men live together. Sounds of life continuing, adapting, enduring. That Germany was not fighting for survival. That the war was not necessary. That everything he believed was built on foundations of sand. He is, in a sense, more prisoner now than he was in Tunisia, because now he knows. And knowing changes everything. May 8, 1945, 11:15 a.m. Camp Alva Assembly Yard. Klaus Fischer sets down the chair leg he's been sanding and exchanges glances with Werner. 3,000 German prisoners gather in rough formation. Camp Commander Colonel Patterson stands on a platform, flanked by Sergeant Morrison and Lieutenant Pearson. "Gentlemen," Patterson says in English, then pauses while Pearson translates to German. The silence is absolute. 3,000 men, holding their breath. I know many of you are thinking of your families, of your homes, of what comes next. You will continue to be treated with dignity and respect. and in time you will go home. Some stand frozen, staring at nothing. Hauptmann Weber sits down on the ground where he stands, puts his head in his hands, and his shoulders shake. Fischer feels nothing at first. Then everything. Relief, horror, grief, confusion. The war is over. Germany has lost. Everything they fought for, died for, sacrificed for, gone. My family, Hoffmann says, his voice hollow. Hamburg was bombed. Over and over. Are they alive? Fischer receives 3 letters at once, all from his mother, dated between January and March 1945. He sits on his bunk, hands shaking, and opens them in order. The first is matter-of-fact, almost cheerful. Elizabeth is recovering. Food is scarce, but we manage. We hear no news of you, but pray daily. The second is darker. The bombing grows worse. We sleep in the cellar. Your father's school was destroyed. No one was hurt, thank God, but there is no school now. Elizabeth still coughs from the dust and smoke. The third, dated March 17, 1945, is written in different handwriting, his aunt's. Klaus, I am sorry to write this news. They died together in the cellar, we are told. Please write. Please come home when you can. Everything he left behind in 1941 when he joined the Wehrmacht, when he believed the propaganda about quick victory and righteous cause gone. Safe in the middle of America while his world burned. The camp continues around him, men playing volleyball, others working in the gardens that prisoners maintain, someone practicing English phrases with Corporal Henderson. Werner finds him sitting alone behind the carpentry workshop. Werner picks up a wood shaving, turns it over in his fingers. We were told we were superior, that we deserved more, that others deserved less. And we believed it because it was easier than questioning. I killed men, Fischer says quietly, in North Africa. Letters from Germany paint a picture of devastation, cities in ruins, starvation widespread, millions displaced, the economy shattered, the government under Allied occupation. Lieutenant Pearson holds special classes now, preparing prisoners for return. Cities that Fischer remembers as vibrant and alive, now reduced to skeletal ruins. This is what you're going home to, Pearson says, his voice gentle but firm. And German bombers did the same to London, Coventry, Rotterdam. Have you heard about the camps? The concentration camps. You need to understand what was done in Germany's name. I wish it were. God, I wish it were, but it's not. American soldiers liberated some of the camps. After class, Fischer walks the camp perimeter alone. He thinks about the war, about the casual anti-Semitism that permeated German society, the laws that excluded Jews from normal life, the violence of Kristallnacht that he witnessed but didn't protest. He thinks about the propaganda that called Jews subhuman, that called Slavs inferior, that justified conquest and domination. And he realizes that he was complicit, not in the actual killing, perhaps, but in the system that made it possible. By not questioning, by not resisting, by going along. February 1946, Camp Alva. Klaus Fischer's name finally appears on the repatriation list. He'll ship out in March, first to New York, then by transport to Bremerhaven, and finally by train to what remains of Hamburg. After 2 years and 8 months in America, he's going home. Others remain, waiting their turn. They share coffee and cookies from the canteen, and the conversation is subdued. Make sure she's safe. Find work, if there is work. Rebuild, I suppose. Fischer shrugs. Corporal Henderson stops by, shakes Fischer's hand. You were a good worker. I hope ... double quotes. He trails off, then starts again. I hope Germany finds its way back. I hope you find peace. Henderson looks uncomfortable. Maybe we can remember. He also packs something else. A baseball that Private Ellis gave him, signed by the American guards and German prisoners of his work crew. On the white leather, in English and German, are messages. Good luck. Stay strong. Build something better. Peace. It's absurd, carrying a baseball back to ruined Hamburg. But it means something. It represents something. A reminder that even enemies can recognize each other's humanity. That war is not inevitable. That kindness is not weakness. Hamburg's port, once one of Europe's busiest, is a wasteland of sunken ships and damaged piers. The city beyond is worse, whole districts flattened, buildings standing like broken teeth, rubble piled higher than a man's head. Fischer stands on German soil for the first time in 5 years and feels nothing like homecoming. This is not the Germany he left. He finds his aunt's apartment in Altona, a district that survived relatively intact. And Elizabeth is alive, thin, marked by illness and trauma, but alive. You came back, she sobs into his shoulder. Everyone said prisoners in America never came back. They said you were dead. That night, they share a meal of thin soup and black bread. Fischer's ration card combined with theirs, stretched to feed 3. His aunt apologizes for the meager food. Fischer thinks of steak dinners in Oklahoma and says nothing. Fischer looks at her haunted face, at his aunt's exhausted eyes, at the cracked plaster of the walls, and the cold that seeps in through broken windows. How can he tell them? How can he explain that while they suffered, he lived in comfort? That while they starved, he ate well? That while they huddled in cellars during bombing raids, he watched movies and played baseball? It was different, he says finally. Very different. They treated us well. Better than we deserved, maybe. Fischer thinks about Sergeant Morrison, about Lieutenant Pearson, about Corporal Henderson and Private Ellis, and all the Americans who could have been cruel and weren't, who could have sought revenge and chose mercy instead. That treating people well isn't weakness, it's strength. Elizabeth touches it gently, reading the messages in broken English. What does this one say? She asks, pointing. Build something better, Fischer translates. Build something better. That's what one of the guards wrote. An American whose grandfather came from Bavaria. Klaus Fischer doesn't have an answer, but he thinks of the 2 years and 8 months in Camp Alva. He thinks of the transformation that happened inside him, slow, painful, unwanted, but real. If he could change, perhaps Germany could too. In America, it's morning, and somewhere in Oklahoma, the sun is rising over Camp Alva, where German prisoners still wait for their turn to go home. They're eating breakfast eggs and bacon and toast. They're learning English. And perhaps, just perhaps, when they return to Germany, they'll remember. Not because the Americans were perfect. Not because America had no flaws. That kindness can be more powerful than cruelty. That abundance is possible when people cooperate instead of conquer. Klaus Fischer holds his sister close, feeling her thin shoulders, and makes a silent promise to his dead parents. He will remember. He will build something better. He will not let the lessons of Camp Alva be forgotten.